when I talked about the other two African American or black girls who um, made the cheerleading squad, Lita White is still my friend today. She lived in the 600 block, and she encouraged me to try out for cheerleading because her older sisters were cheerleaders, and it was expected that she would be one too. So after school, we would walk home and she would say, "Why don't you come down? I have to practice cheering with my sister." So that was my way to get out of the house. I had never been a cheerleader. I never had any ambition to be a cheerleader, but we became very good friends. And that was a memory. Being on that cheerleading squad was never contentious, but as the black girls on the squad, we were constantly trying to put more rhythm, more movements in the cheers. So it was that push pull thing. But it worked. It worked. I didn't try out for the varsity cheerleading squad when they consolidated because at that point in my life, I knew I wanted to go to college and I had to focus on my grades. And thank God I had the letter from the superintendent. I think his name was Albaum, maybe during that time, thanking me for working with the SCA that summer because I was able to use that letter in my packet. So that was good. My grandmother, Dorothy Napper, she gave me her family history on a brown, it's like a brown paper bag. She had written the names of the slave masters plantation in Caroline County. She had written the names of the two sisters of Emily Lomax who were sold into slavery, whom we don't know what happened to them, but she had the wherewithal and she knew the importance of passing that information on to us to let us know we have people we don't even know that were sold, but we have their names. And thanks to Cha for getting as much of this information to me as she could. It's amazing to me to know that people who did extraordinary things and had to live through difficult times were able to do so much. And they were my relatives, and I know about them. And I'm so proud to know this history. And I think, I just want the rest of my family to know how important it is for our children to know their history. I didn't know a lot of this growing up. People just didn't talk about historical things back then. I remember seeing my grandfather recognized when they had the big name opening for the football stadium, the Parker Gray football stadium. I had no idea why he was being recognized. I didn't know the connection to John Parker until now. And so for me, again, I talk about that because it just blew me away when I found out that he had done all these things. It's just amazing. Well, I think I was asked that question about finding out that my descendants were buried under that gas station. I had mixed feelings about that. I went to that gas station to get gas. I had no idea. I had 7 relatives buried under that gas station. And so to find out that the city of Alexandria made it a big deal, it would be different if they tried to cover it up and they didn't say anything. But they have a statue. They, they made a big deal about it. And I think for me, that was okay. If that's, that was better than still trying to cover it up. So, they try to cover up our history now and not tell exactly what has happened, but Alexandria did. The city of Alexandria did. And these kinds of projects that we're doing today continue to do that. So I unfortunately fortunately, unfortunately, I would love to be able to live in Alexandria, but I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And, I when you talk about what's changed and what that piece of it really bothers me, because I am a descendant of someone whose name bears Parker Gray. They have a section in Alexandria, Parker Gray District. I can't even afford to live in that district. So that's the piece that gets to me. I know where my 4 generations of family came from, off of Fairfax and North Fairfax or Madison Street, that intersection. They're housed. When I drive my dad by there, he will say that's where we used to live. We used to play over there, and I see all these buildings and these, that are nice, and think, my descendants worked in that area. They made that area. And none of my family members can afford to live in Alexandria. We all have to move away. So we can't afford it. That's the big piece. My dad still lives in his home. My grandmother's home is still here on Alfred Street, but no, everybody else, no, and my uncle's home, that lives 2 doors from my dad, they still live in their home. So, but many of the people I grew up with, their family sold their houses, and, regentrification comes in. So, that's sad. No, to be honest, I didn't. My my aunt and uncle, Uncle Alvin and my aunt Jeanette Taylor, they lived 820. They lived in the next block of Queen Street. I think maybe we came here a couple of times for a story time or something, but growing up, no, I didn't. I don't even remember going to the Barrett Library. I just remember maybe coming here. No, and none of the other historical places. Maybe the market down in Old Town. We used to walk there, and in the afternoons sometimes. And one other thing I do remember was the Johnson Pool. My family were avid swimmers, and it was required that all of us knew how to swim. So during the summers, we would all go to the Johnson Pool. That was named after the Johnson kids who drowned. And they built that pool. My mother's brother, Earl Jackson, he drowned in the Potomac River as well. They were, kids want to go swim, and a riptide came and he drowned. I think he was maybe 13. But so my love for swimming is because of my family's history and legacy. Allegedly, there's a story that my uncle Oscar Taylor he could swim from the bank of the Alexandria River all the way over to the other side. he was a good swimmer. So I don't know, but that's a story that was passed down. But all of my brothers, my dad's brothers, they could all swim and swim beautifully. So I've tried to pass that on to my children, the legacy of being able to swim. And I always point out places in Alexandria that are important for my children to know about. Yeah, Nanny J. Lee used to be that was where I went to elementary school for a while. So every time I go there, I think, Nanny J. Lee, okay, this used to be Robert E. Lee. Yes, yes. I don't know, I don't know of anything else that I have left out.
One more question then. You said your grandmother taught you about cooking. Do you have any family recipes that are like the family recipe?
You know, I do, but I can't share them. I do. Yeah, she was just she just could cook everything you could imagine. And when we would have our cooking lessons, the big question of the day was who was going to crack the egg, because she taught us a way to crack the egg so the shells wouldn't get into the bowl. And so a lot of times it was me, and I got to crack the egg. So my cousins tease me sometimes about that you were the one that got to crack the egg. But yeah, I did. I love to cook because of her. And she worked as a domestic. And in fact, she worked for a family on Washington Street. My dad has taken me by that home. And she told me at one point, you have to go to college. She was a short woman, but her voice was very commanding. And she would look at me and say, you have to go to college because you don't want to ever have to work like this. And I had her picture on my desk throughout my career in education because it reminded me of her telling me that. And I knew I was standing on her shoulders every time I was faced with anything. I could almost hear voices telling me, "You go, you have this, you can do this, keep going." So yes, those voices and the cloud of witnesses who encouraged me are just so important. And I pray I never forget who they are. That is why I speak their names, because their names are important to know.